The white mansion standing in Greenwich, Connecticut's upscale residential area was beautiful enough to have stepped out of a magazine. In that house, surrounded by well-maintained lawns and seasonal flowers, Emily Hartman was living her 5th year of marriage with her husband Michael. She spent each day carefully cherishing the miracle of pregnancy she had finally achieved. The days of fertility treatment had been painful and long. Countless trips to the hospital, side effects from hormone injections, and repeated disappointments. Emily's body changed under the influence of medications, and her heart oscillated between hope and despair. Michael had shown understanding in the beginning, but as time passed, his attitude toward the treatment grew cold. Still, Emily never gave up. And 6 months ago, pregnancy was finally confirmed. Michael was an investment advisor who had achieved success on Wall Street. His sharp gaze and well-featured appearance had instantly captured Emily's heart when they first met. The two had been introduced by a friend, and after a brief 6-month courtship, they married. Michael's work was highly regarded, and he enjoyed strong trust from his clients. However, recently, his homecoming hours had become later and later, and conversations at home had decreased. Emily tried to convince herself it was work stress. Michael's mother, Barbara, had begun living in this house when her son married. She was a former teacher, beloved by the neighbors for her refined appearance and polite manner of speaking. However, her attitude toward Emily was subtly cold, and especially after the pregnancy became known, she repeatedly asked intrusive questions about the baby's gender. When the ultrasound revealed it was a girl, Barbara's expression showed clear disappointment. "Even if it's a girl, I'm sure she'll be a lovely granddaughter," Emily said gently, but Barbara only smiled ambiguously. Rosa, the housekeeper working in this house, had been employed live-in with the Hartman family for 3 years. Mexican-American, she was modest and serious in character, handling all household duties perfectly. Rosa had 2 children back in her homeland, but had chosen this job, separated from her family, to provide them with a better education. For Emily, Rosa was the closest person outside of family. Since becoming pregnant, Emily's days began regularly. She woke at 7 in the morning and ate the nutritionally balanced breakfast Rosa prepared for her. After that, she enjoyed light walks and spent afternoons reading and knitting. While knitting small clothes for the baby, Emily savored her happiness. The dream of becoming a mother that she had wished for so long was finally about to become reality. However, beneath the surface tranquility, subtle anxiety lurked. Michael shared dinner less frequently, using work as an excuse, and sudden business trips increased on weekends. When Emily consulted him about her physical condition, only curt replies like, "Just see a doctor," came back. Her mother-in-law Barbara also never spoke words of concern about Emily's condition. Rather, she often threw harsh words like, "Pregnancy isn't an illness, so you should be stronger." In this situation, only Rosa sensitively noticed Emily's changes. During difficult morning sickness periods, she prepared special drinks, and when Emily's body became heavy, she naturally helped with housework. Though she spoke little, her thoughtfulness saved Emily many times. Emily noticed that occasionally, worried expressions appeared in Rosa's eyes. At dusk, Emily often sat by the large window in the living room, gazing at the garden while lost in thought. Feeling the small life moving in her belly while contemplating the life as a mother that was about to begin was the happiest moment of her day. On an autumn afternoon when she reached 6 months of pregnancy, Emily was told by her doctor that progress was going well, and she headed home with light steps. Her belly was already noticeably large, and as she walked imagining the small dresses and toys she had seen at baby stores, smiles naturally appeared. The conversations with other pregnant women in the obstetrics waiting room were also enjoyable, and friendships were beginning to bloom with women scheduled to give birth around the same time. When she arrived home, Rosa greeted her at the entrance. Seeing her warm smile, Emily felt relieved. "How was the checkup?" Rosa asked gently, and Emily answered happily. "Very good. The baby is moving energetically too." Rosa clasped her hands together to express joy and said, "That's wonderful. Today I made your favorite chicken soup," leading Emily to the dining room. However, Michael's behavior was changing day by day. Previously, when he returned from work, he would show concern for Emily's condition and place his hand on her belly to feel the baby's movements, but now he only engaged in greeting-level conversation. During dinner time, he increasingly finished meals in silence while staring at his cell phone. When Emily said, "The baby moved a lot today," only short replies like, "I see," came back. One night, Emily gathered courage to speak to Michael. "You seem tired lately. Is there something worrying you?" Michael answered without looking up from his newspaper. "Work is busy. A new project has started, and the responsibility is heavy." Emily tried to show understanding. "That must be difficult. But don't overdo it. The baby will be born soon, and family time is important too." At that moment, irritation briefly flashed across Michael's expression. "I know. But right now I have to focus on work." Her mother-in-law Barbara's attitude was also gradually changing. At first, she seemed to be happy about the pregnancy, but after learning the fetus was a girl, she clearly stopped hiding her disappointment. "The Hartman family needs a boy," she would say directly to Emily. Emily tried to respond, "Girls are wonderful too. I'm sure she'll be a lovely granddaughter," but Barbara shook her head. "Girls just become part of other families when they marry. Boys are necessary to carry on the family line." Barbara's words escalated day by day. "My friend's son is considering divorce because his wife can't produce a boy. Women who only bear girls have been considered unlucky since ancient times." Emily was hurt by these words but continued to endure them to maintain family peace. However, when lying alone in bed at night, there were times when tears wouldn't stop. Physical changes were also becoming concerning. Having entered the second trimester, when morning sickness generally settles down, Emily was experiencing increased nausea and headaches instead. Her appetite disappeared, and foods that previously tasted good often wouldn't go down. When she consulted her doctor, she was told, "There are individual differences, so don't worry too much," but Emily's anxiety didn't disappear. Even when Emily complained to Michael about her poor health, his reaction was cold. "You're making a big fuss again. Pregnancy isn't an illness, so be stronger." His words deeply hurt Emily's heart. The husband who once gently supported her was no longer there. The only salvation was Rosa's presence. She sensitively noticed Emily's physical changes, preparing easily digestible meals and brewing special herbal teas when morning sickness was difficult. Though she spoke little, her thoughtfulness was a great support for Emily. Emily noticed that occasionally, worried expressions appeared in Rosa's eyes. One evening, as Emily was resting in the living room, she could hear Michael and Barbara talking in the kitchen. They were trying to keep their voices down, but Emily could make out the content. "So it really is a girl." "Yes. Different from what we expected. Let's hope for a boy next time. We don't know if there will be a next time." Hearing this conversation, Emily felt her chest tighten. Even on weekends, Michael was home less frequently. Using various reasons like golf with clients and study sessions with colleagues, he went out and often didn't return until late at night. Emily spent increasing time alone, and talking to the baby in her belly became her only pleasure. "Daddy is busy. But when you're born, I'm sure he'll be happy." However, Emily's physical condition continued to deteriorate. Dizziness occurred frequently, and climbing stairs became difficult. Rosa looked at Emily with concern and suggested, "Madam, perhaps you should see the doctor again." Emily was thinking the same thing, but feared being told by Michael that she was going to the hospital too much. One night, Emily was struck by severe stomach pain. The pain was so intense that she cried out, and Rosa rushed to her. "Are you all right?" Rosa asked worriedly, but Emily couldn't answer due to the pain. Michael also appeared, noticing the sound, but only said, making a big fuss again, and returned to his room. That night, Rosa stayed by Emily's side, rubbing her back. The next morning, Emily looked at her face in the mirror and was shocked. Her cheeks were hollow, and deep circles had formed under her eyes. The appearance there was haggard, far from what was called the glow of pregnancy. Was this normal pregnancy progress? Indescribable anxiety spread through Emily's heart. One morning, Emily woke with severe abdominal pain. The clock pointed to 3 a.m. At first she thought it was mild pain, but gradually the pain intensified and came in waves. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead, and her breathing became labored. It was a sharp, stabbing pain unlike anything she had experienced before. Michael, Emily tried to shake awake her husband sleeping beside her, but he was in deep sleep and wouldn't wake up. The pain only increased, and Emily involuntarily cried out. Then she felt a wet sensation in her lower abdomen. When she touched it, the sheets were stained with blood. Terror raced through her entire body. "Help me!" Emily's scream echoed throughout the house. Rosa was the first to rush over. She entered the room in her nightgown and immediately understood the situation. "Madam, I'll call an ambulance right away." Rosa's voice was trembling, but her actions were swift. She picked up her cell phone and called 911. Michael finally woke up. At first he couldn't understand what was happening, but when he saw the blood-stained sheets, his expression changed. "What happened?" Confusion was mixed in his voice. Emily couldn't answer due to the pain and only groaned in agony. Barbara also appeared, noticing the commotion. She stopped at the bedroom entrance, and when she saw the blood, she frowned. "Oh my, what is this?" Her voice had an annoyed tone rather than concern. The sound of the ambulance siren approaching could be heard. Rosa ran to the entrance and guided the emergency personnel. 2 male crew members entered the bedroom with a stretcher and quickly checked Emily's condition. "How many months pregnant?" 6 months, Michael answered. "We'll transport her to the hospital immediately." The emergency personnel's expressions were serious. The journey to the hospital felt like an eternity to Emily. In the ambulance, she prayed desperately that the baby would be safe. She didn't want to think about losing the life she had finally conceived after overcoming difficult fertility treatments. Upon arriving at the hospital, Emily was immediately taken to the emergency room. Doctors moved around busily, and various tests were performed. The expression of the doctor looking at the ultrasound screen gradually darkened. Emily watched the doctor's face, sensing the worst outcome. "I'm sorry," the young female doctor's voice was gentle, but those words shattered Emily's heart. "We can't confirm the baby's heartbeat. It's a miscarriage." Emily's world collapsed. The child she had wished for so long was no longer in this world. She couldn't accept that reality. Emily cried out loud. A deep despair unlike anything she had ever experienced dominated her heart. A nurse gently embraced her shoulders, but even that warmth couldn't reach Emily now. Michael's reaction upon hearing the news in the waiting room was completely different from what Emily had expected. When he entered the treatment room, he looked down at Emily and said, "What does this mean? Why did this happen?" Anger was contained in his voice. "You did this on purpose, you fraud," Michael's words echoed in the treatment room. Emily looked up at her husband in disbelief. She never thought her beloved husband would throw such words at her during her most painful time. "Why would you say that?" Emily's voice trembled. "You never wanted children from the beginning. That's why you deliberately caused the miscarriage." Michael's words wouldn't stop. "You deceived me into marriage, and now you're killing children too." The doctors and nurses in the treatment room also noticed the atmosphere and were confused. Emily said with her face a mess of tears, "That's not true. I loved the baby. I didn't want to lose it." However, Michael wouldn't listen. Stop lying. All your actions were suspicious. Then Barbara appeared. She glanced at Emily and smiled coldly. I knew it. I could tell from the beginning. Emily looked at Barbara with clinging thoughts. She hoped at least her mother-in-law might offer words of comfort. However, Barbara's next words pushed Emily further into the abyss of despair. Unable to even bear children, you're like garbage. Her laughter echoed in the treatment room. A woman who would cut off the Hartman family bloodline was never needed from the beginning. Emily screamed. Help me, someone help me. However, both her husband and mother-in-law only blamed her, and no one comforted her. The doctor tried to control the situation, but couldn't become deeply involved in family internal problems. We did our best. However, sometimes miscarriages occur that medicine cannot explain. The doctor tried to explain, but Michael wouldn't listen. I don't want to hear doctors' excuses. My wife must have done something. Emily's heart was completely broken. Betrayed by the people she trusted most, faced with the reality of not being supported during her most painful time. In addition to the sadness of losing her child, the cruel words from family deeply wounded her soul. At that moment, the treatment room door quietly opened. Rosa entered. Her eyes were moist with tears. While Michael and Barbara continued arguing, Rosa approached Emily's bedside. Madam, Rosa's voice was gentle and trembling. She pressed a small folded piece of paper into Emily's hand. Please read this. Not now if you can't, but later for sure. In Rosa's eyes dwelled deep sadness and at the same time, a strong will to convey something. Emily received the paper with trembling hands. She didn't have the energy to read it immediately, but Rosa's serious expression remained in her heart. Why had she given her this piece of paper now? Michael and Barbara continued blaming Emily without even noticing Rosa's presence. This woman had problems from the beginning. The marriage was a mistake. Their words wounded Emily's heart even more deeply. When Emily was alone in the hospital room, she finally opened the piece of paper. There, written in careful feminine handwriting, was a short message. Dear Emily, I am Jessica. I was asked by Mr. Michael to mix medicine into your food, but my conscience hurts. I recorded all conversations. I entrust the evidence to Rosa. Please know the truth. After reading Jessica's letter, Emily gripped the paper with trembling hands. All the pieces were fitting together into a terrifying puzzle. Her husband's sudden change in attitude, the unexplained poor health, and the miscarriage. Everything had been systematically orchestrated. In Emily's heart, deep sadness transformed into intense anger. The next day, Emily was to be discharged. The doctor explained, physically you're recovering, but you need mental care. I recommend receiving counseling. However, Emily's head was full of thoughts of revenge. She could never forgive those who had taken her beloved child. Returning home, Michael and Barbara were going about their daily lives as if nothing had happened. Michael said things like, "How about we go out to eat for a change of pace?" And Barbara made insensitive remarks like, "You should try to conceive a boy next time." Emily maintained a calm facade while internally planning to gather evidence. When she looked for Rosa, she was alone in the kitchen preparing meals. When Emily approached, Rosa turned around and looked at her with concern. Madam, how are you feeling? Rosa, I need to talk about that letter. Somewhere private, Emily said quietly. The two moved to an unused guest room. When Emily showed Jessica's letter, Rosa sighed deeply. So you did read it. Rosa, did you know everything? Emily's voice trembled. Rosa began to speak heavily. 3 months ago, a woman named Jessica started coming to this house occasionally. When Mr. Michael wasn't here, she would have secret discussions with Mrs. Barbara. I accidentally overheard their conversations while cleaning. According to Rosa's account, Jessica was a 28-year-old nutritionist and Michael's mistress. Michael had been involved with her even before Emily became pregnant, and when the pregnancy was discovered, he had chosen a future with Jessica. However, divorce would involve property division and alimony issues. So he conspired with Barbara to end Emily's pregnancy and mentally drive Emily to pursue divorce herself. Jessica initially went along with Mr. Michael's wishes. However, as time passed, she became increasingly tormented by guilt, Rosa continued. Especially seeing how Mrs. Emily's health deteriorated, she began to feel remorse. What Jessica had been mixing into Emily's food was an extract from herbs that could potentially cause miscarriage. Using her nutritionist knowledge for evil, she had identified natural components harmful to fetuses and gradually mixed them into meals. Emily's poor health was the result of those drugs. "Where are the recordings?" Emily asked urgently. Rosa led her to her room and produced a small digital recorder. This is what Jessica left behind. Mr. Michael's conversations, meetings with Mrs. Barbara, everything is recorded. Emily took the recorder with trembling hands and pressed the play button. Michael's voice could be heard. "Make sure Emily doesn't notice, gradually increase the amount. It's important to make it look like a natural miscarriage." Then Jessica's anxious voice, "But isn't this murder? You're being dramatic. It's just an accident. Besides, there's no point in a girl being born anyway." Barbara's voice was also recorded. "My son deserves a more suitable woman. A beautiful young woman like Jessica is appropriate for the Hartman family bride. If Emily has a mental breakdown and requests divorce, the alimony will be minimal too. If she becomes depressed from the miscarriage shock, she won't be able to claim custody either." After listening to the recording, Emily's entire body shook with anger. They had not only taken her child's life but had also tried to destroy Emily's own life. "Rosa, why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I'm sorry. But without evidence, I thought you wouldn't believe me. Also, Jessica wasn't cooperative at first." According to Rosa's explanation, Jessica had initially followed Michael's orders while feeling guilty. However, seeing Emily's suffering up close, her conscience finally won. She had secretly recorded all conversations, keeping them as evidence. The night before the miscarriage, Jessica had entrusted the letter and recordings to Rosa, asking her to convey the truth if anything happens. Emily stood up. There was no more time to grieve. Now was the time to act. "Rosa, let's contact the police." "Yes, madam. I will also testify as a witness." That night, Emily carefully planned. First, she decided to report to police from outside, so family wouldn't realize. The next morning, saying, "I'm going for a walk to refresh myself," she left the house. From a nearby park, Emily called 911. "My husband, mother-in-law, and his mistress conspired to kill my baby. I have evidence." The operator initially took time to understand Emily's story. However, when she explained the details, detectives were immediately dispatched. 2 hours later, detectives visited the Hartman house. Michael and Barbara were confused by the sudden visit. "What do you want?" Michael asked, and the veteran detective answered, "We're arresting Michael Hartman and Barbara Hartman on suspicion of fetal homicide and attempted murder." Michael's face turned pale. "What are you saying? Do you have evidence?" The detective played the recording data Emily had submitted. When Michael's own voice resonated, he was speechless. Barbara screamed, "This is a trap. It's fabricated," but when she heard her own recorded voice, she sat down as if resigned. Jessica's arrest took place that evening. She didn't resist and actually showed a relieved expression. At the police station, she confessed in detail. "I was suffering from guilt every day. I'm truly sorry for what I did to Emily." Michael denied everything to the end, but with physical evidence, recordings, and Jessica's testimony, everything became clear. Barbara also tried to protect her son, but could say nothing in the face of evidence recorded in her own voice. Late at night, Emily sat alone in the living room. Justice had been served, but her lost child wouldn't return. However, knowing the truth made her heart feel slightly lighter. Rosa brought warm tea. "Madam, you really worked hard today." "Thank you, Rosa. Without you, I could never have known the truth." The two quietly drank tea while discussing their future lives. 1 year later in spring, Emily quietly listened to the final verdict in court. Michael received a 15-year prison sentence for fetal homicide and attempted murder. He refused to acknowledge his crimes to the end, but could offer no excuse before overwhelming evidence. Jessica received a 10-year sentence as an accomplice, but had been given a reduced sentence due to surrender and full cooperation. Barbara's trial was held separately, and she received an 8-year sentence for conspiracy and incitement. She told various lies to protect her son, but recorded evidence revealed she was one of the masterminds. During the trial process, most of Barbara's assets were to be paid to Emily as compensation. Divorce proceedings were also completed, and Emily officially gave up the Hartman name. She had gained little from married life with Michael, but enormous compensation and property division enabled her financial independence. However, what was most valuable was being able to know the truth and finding truly trustworthy people. Emily purchased a new house. It was in a quiet residential area slightly away from Greenwich, a medium-sized house with a garden. Though not a luxurious mansion, it was a warm space that was perfect for Emily. She proposed that Rosa live with her. "Would you live with me?" Not as an employment relationship anymore, but as family. At Emily's offer, Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure that's all right? You saved me. Let's walk a new life together from now on." Rosa was able to bring her 2 children from Mexico to America. Her 16-year-old son Carlos and 14-year-old daughter Maria began new lives in Emily's house. Emily supported their education costs and treated them like real family. Carlos was good at math and aimed to become an engineer, while Maria had artistic talent and learned painting from Emily. Though healing emotional wounds took time, Emily gradually became more positive while continuing counseling. The sadness of miscarriage would never disappear, but she was able to find strength to live beyond it. The therapist said, "The tragedy you experienced is never meaningless. That experience will become the power to help someone in your future life." One day, Emily began volunteer work at a local children's home. She was nervous at first, but touching the children's pure smiles, she realized she still had love to give. Especially, time spent with children not blessed with families became healing for Emily. 7-year-old Sophia, whom she met at the facility, became particularly attached to Emily. Having lost her parents in an accident and not taken in by relatives, she tended to close her heart to adults. However, touching Emily's kindness, she gradually began to smile. "Emily, when are you coming next?" Sophia asked while holding Emily's hand. "I'll come next week too. Let's draw pictures together," Emily answered with a smile. In this moment, Emily was certain. Even without blood relations, you can become real family with love. 6 months later, Emily officially applied for Sophia's adoption. The legal procedures were complex, but Emily's financial situation and mental stability, and above all, her bond with Sophia were recognized, and the adoption was completed. In the new house, Emily, Rosa, Carlos, Maria, and Sophia lived as one family. Though they had no blood connections, they had true family bonds of caring for and supporting each other. During dinner time, everyone discussed the day's events, and laughter never ceased. One night, Sophia asked, "Mama, will we always be together?" Emily embraced her daughter and answered, "Yes, we're family. No matter what happens, let's stay together." Outside the window, the cherry tree planted in the garden was blooming beautifully. Looking at the flowers like symbols of new life, Emily was deeply grateful. What she had lost was great, but what she had gained was even more valuable. Emily had learned firsthand that true love is not about blood relations, but is born between people who stand by you during the most difficult times.